Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacker TV. I'm Bronson Taylor, and today I have Ray Grieselhuber with us. Ray, thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad I pronounced your last name correctly, so we can move on with the interview now. So Ray, you are the CEO and co-founder of GinzaMetrics. So let's start with that. Tell us, what is GinzaMetrics?
GinzaMetrics is an SEO and content marketing analytics platform. So what we do is we unify a lot of data from lots of different places and basically turn that into recommendations that marketers and agencies can use in order to improve the performance of their search campaigns, their content marketing campaigns on an ongoing basis.
Okay, perfect. And we're going to break down what all that actually means in a minute, because I don't fully have my head around it yet from that description, but I know it does some cool stuff. But before we get into the details of it, you have the GinzaMetrics story on your About page, but walk us through kind of where this idea came from, why you wanted to create the product GinzaMetrics. What was the pain you were solving there?
So I'm an engineer, and I got into digital marketing about 7 years ago at another startup where we did a lot of early kind of cross-channel marketing analytics for CMO types, and that was really my first exposure to SEO at that point in time, and I got a lot of really good feel for what sort of things people were dealing with at large-scale search campaigns, search companies. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to kind of drill into that more, and then after that, after I left that company, I moved to Tokyo to hang out for a couple years, and when I was there, I started this kind of boutique interactive agency where I did a lot of work with large e-commerce companies, brands, other agencies, did some work for. And really what I kept seeing was, even though I was doing this consulting and, business was going great, maybe partly being a product guy, I just saw a need for something that was able to function more as a platform that would scale up to international levels and enable people to really get a handle on what decisions they could make. At the time, this was, 2008, 2009. So much stuff was still happening in Excel, and there were like all these crazy teams of people, like 20, 30 people spending weeks at a time trying to compile this data. And obviously, that's obviously a solvable problem. Mm-hmm. But then on top of that, really, I decided to focus in on long-term value question, which is, what are people really trying to do with all this data? And at the end of the day, they're trying to answer a couple of core questions, about what they should do for planning their content strategy. And so that's really what I've been focused on, from day one. Obviously, we've evolved quite a bit since we launched, but that's kind of been our core value prop from day one.
Yeah, well, let's talk about how you evolved a little bit. You guys were part of the Y Combinator 2010 class, and I know that a lot of companies that go through Y Combinator, they have ideas when they go in, and then they kind of get put into submission, while they're there, and they leave with something slightly different. How close is the product when you guys left Y Combinator to when you began? And maybe even how has it grown since then? And what are some of the big changes that you've made to your philosophy or thinking or product?
Yep. So I had a couple of early customers on the Alpha platform before going into YC. And so I knew that people would pay for something kind of related to what I was doing. And so during the process of YC, I was actually revamping it to release a new, cleaner code base that would actually scale up a little bit more. And then right at the end of YC, I launched the current code base, which obviously has changed quite a bit since then. And so what I released at the end of YC was pretty close to what I started building. Obviously I got a lot of great feedback on the product from PG and a lot of the other people there. So it helped me refine it quite a bit, but the kind of core product functionality didn't change too much. Since then, I would say the biggest change that we've done has really been around moving much more aggressively into incorporating even more data sources like social. We track a lot of social signals from Facebook, Twitter, Google Plus, and everything else to give people a comprehensive view on what's happening. And content marketing, really as an industry, I don't know how much people have had a chance to look into it because it's still kind of new, but it's something that companies are really struggling with. They're spending a lot of money to create high quality content, and they're even starting to shift really significant amounts of ad budget away into this organic content marketing. And so that paralleled very nicely with what we were doing, because we've always been about helping people create the highest quality content for search performance. And so it was a very natural evolution. And so I would say from, any sort of growth has been along those lines.
Yeah. So did you guys start kind of with an SEO focus and then evolved into more content and social as well as SEO? Is that a fair way to kind of see the trajectory there?
Yep. Yeah. When we launched, we were pure SEO. And the value proposition at that point in time was basically, we make it easy to track your rankings, get recommendations about your content, your pages to perform better in search, and then we tie it all together with your analytics data, and that was kind of like the three pillars of the application. And since then, it's grown into much more of a comprehensive platform that allows you to manage all aspects and really combine your search and social efforts in this kind of content marketing.
Yeah. Do you think that a company has to evolve in that kind of way for this sort of platform? Or do you think you could have stayed just SEO purely and still had a little bit of market share? Or do companies really need to get into content and analytics to really serve their customers now, you think?
If you look at where the puck is moving, it's going to be about content marketing for sure. There is always going to be room in this industry for like vertical solutions. There's a number of companies out there that they'll only focus on rank tracking, for example, and they do a nice job of that. But and for I think probably for certain types of companies that may work. Type of customers we work with, it just wasn't going to be enough, and so we had to build this platform that would do everything from all that stuff to reporting and workflow and automation and kind of deeper analytics.
Yeah, well, let's dig into the product because I'm not a user because it's an enterprise level product. So I want to kind of know about how it works and what you actually do for your customers. But first, kind of tell us, what are the unique needs of an enterprise content strategy or SEO strategy or analytics strategy that a small or medium-sized business may not have? What is it that you guys are doing for them that they really need there?
Yeah, it comes down to a couple of things. I would say the first one is that in a small company, a lot of times it'll be like the CEO or someone very close to the top person at that company doing most of the work. They tend to be split out. They're doing many different things in a single job title, and so that's fine, but it's kind of harder to scale. When you deal with enterprise companies, and we define enterprise as any type of company that is kind of like Inc. 500 on up. What that means is they're growing, they're seeing a positive financial return from search marketing and from content marketing. And what they do is they start to hire people specifically to focus on these roles. And so you'll have like our customers, our buyers in house are usually like the SEO manager, the VP of search, director of search marketing, that sort of thing. And more we're seeing that become like the director of content marketing or content marketing manager as well. And so for them it becomes a lot of the processes tend to be the same. The recommendations have to scale out to much larger volumes of keywords and sites. A lot of times companies will be managing dozens or hundreds of sites all around the world, or even in the US. And so if there's a scale problem there's kind of a reporting problem where people are being held accountable to hit certain metrics. And so we need to be able to show that their KPIs are obviously correctly reporting everything that they're doing and that they're hitting those and that their targets are in place. And then really it's like this organizational problem where even if you're the SEO manager, you're dealing with people, maybe you have external agencies and content production teams that you're working with. You have managers that you have to report to. You have maybe like brand and communications people. You have developers, web designers, everything else. And so it becomes very complex very quickly. And the key thing about SEO is even though people think it's mainly about search engines, if you look at all the different things that you have to do in order to correctly execute on search and content, you really are dealing with like the fundamental kind of foundational issues that are key to your entire website and your digital strategy. So it's something that really forms that kind of foundation for everything you do. So that's really, if you think about a Fortune 500 type company trying to manage that at scale, you can very easily imagine how quickly that becomes a complicated thing to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, walk us through how when you get a new client, what do they do to actually set up GinzaMetrics? Because I'm still trying to wrap my head around what exactly it does, what it's showing me, what I'm inputting, what it's outputting. So, I sign up, I'm a new customer. What do? Am I installing scripts on all my sites and it's tracking stuff? Is it something different? What does the dashboard look like? What am I getting from it? Tell me what the actual product feels like when I'm using it.
Sure. So signing up is a pretty straightforward process. It takes about 5 minutes to get up and running. So we don't require you to install any additional tags on your site. That was something that people told us very early on. They don't need yet another JavaScript on their site. So we decided to use your existing analytics system. So we tie in directly with Google Analytics, or if you're a bigger company and using something like Omniture or Adobe Site Catalyst, we can work with that too. So we take all of your existing data. From that one data source alone, we can generate a huge amount of reports and analytics back to you. And so basically what we do is we look at your existing traffic, we crawl your site, we crawl your competitor sites, we start seeing what your performance looks like on the search engines, on social networks. And basically from that 1 5-minute setup, takes a couple of hours to get things back to you. But once that's up and running, you can start immediately digging into how you're performing in key areas that really matter to you. We help you identify the highest priority keywords for you to focus on. We help you fix on-page and off-site issues that are relevant to your landing pages, show you where you're getting the most traction on social networks, and then help you kind of further plan next steps. And then on top of that, we provide some workflow tools to help you to kind of further create a process around it. A lot of success in SEO and really content marketing is really just being good at operationalizing a lot of this stuff. And so building a process internally, regardless of what size of company you are, is really the key. And so we provide a lot of tools to help you make the right decisions about segmenting your traffic and applying a different strategy for new customer acquisition for each one of those different segments. So it's a lot of stuff that SEO is kind of from day one been dealing with very messy data sources, and so a lot of the value is in helping you automate that entire data collection process and then turning it into something useful.
Gotcha. No, it sounds like a great idea. It reminds me of Brad Feld. He has an investment thesis about glue. There's this glue layer of the internet that's pulling together all these different APIs and data sources and kind of linking things together. And it seems like that's what you guys are doing. So let me make sure I got this right. So you're taking maybe a Google Analytics over here. You're taking my Twitter handle over here. You're taking different, API, different kind of logins, and then you're running algorithms against them and giving me meaningful feedback of here's what your next step should be. Here's what's working. Here's what's not working. Is that kind of what you guys are doing there?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let me ask you this. When companies start using GinzaMetrics and they log in and the data starts coming back to them in meaningful ways, what is it that they just love? What's the aha moment? The moment where they're like, yes, I didn't know that and I'm really glad I know that. Or I didn't know this feature was there and I'm really glad that feature's there. What is it they love about GinzaMetrics?
We see a lot of people using, just hitting our recommendations page, and refreshing it all the time because they're always trying to get new recommendations about, okay, I fixed this, now what should I fix next? The other thing that we see people doing is we have a really, I'm biased obviously, but a really nice, reporting page where basically you can get every day the latest stats on how you're performing in search, what the primary problem areas are, what your best success has been. We're tracking all of your different conversions, so if you have conversions or goals set up in Google Analytics, we're going to import those directly and show you which keywords are driving the most traffic to the right type of conversion events. And so it almost becomes like a game for people where they're going in every day and they're like, okay, I need my fix, what's working, what I need to fix, and then they can basically use that as the basis for creating a process around it.
Yeah, how often do they get recommendations? Is it if they make changes every day? Is it every day there's new ones, or it might have to wait a while?
We try to make it relevant to the data that we're collecting. So a lot of things happen daily. Probably about 3/4 of the product recommendations and analytics happen on a daily basis. And then there are other things that we think people would be overloaded by if we did it every day. And we don't want to, crash the server or anything. So we try to space things out a little bit in terms of some of the analysis that we do. So we make that a weekly thing. And then we'll have people every once in a while say, hey, I just made a bunch of changes. I don't want to wait another week for that. So we provide on-demand functionality to let you go out and schedule it whenever you need it.
Yeah, and you've talked about kind of the marriage between SEO and content. Am I able to log in and look at the back end of your system and see what different content strategies have done and see kind of, recommendations on content and not just, SEO related stuff? So it'll give me feedback on both?
Yeah, we're doing some of that now, and that's one of the areas where we're kind of focusing in more on. So a lot of the newer tools that we're starting to release, we do weekly releases about twice a week, and sometimes those are big pushes, sometimes those are, little bug fixes and stuff. But as we kind of iterate on what we have so far, a lot of the newer things that we're doing are around people planning out campaigns, being able to measure the impact of those campaigns that they're, engaging in.
No, that's great. What are some of the biggest success stories of GinzaMetrics? This is your chance to brag a little bit. That's how case studies really are. Watch me brag, right? But I'm asking you, so it's okay. What are some of the companies, and maybe you can name them, maybe you can't, that have used it and just had great returns, and maybe specifically what they did or how they used it to give our audience an idea of I could use it that way, or I might need this as well, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Our audience is divided pretty evenly into agencies and in-house marketers, and so what they do with it kind of depends on what their role is. Our agency customers love it because it helps them win new customers, very simply. So the platform itself is white labelable, and so a lot of the agencies, they're trying to automate all of their reporting back to their customers, make them look good, show their clients the value that they're providing to them. And we provide really nice, attractive reports that are customizable and schedulable and can contain your branding and everything else. And so these agencies already have the process to execute well on search campaigns, and we make it easy for them to show that they're doing a good job. And so we've had agencies that have won, multi-million-dollar clients basically on the fact that they're able to combine their expertise with a platform like ours that's branded for them, and so the client thinks that they have this kind of awesome in-house tool set that they're using to help them really deliver some of these strategies. So that's a very common use case, and we're getting a lot of traction based on agencies being able to use that as a platform to help them do lead gen, new deal closes, and everything else. On the in-house side, it kind of depends on what your goals are and what type of company you are. So if you are a SaaS company, we have a lot of like B2B SaaS customers, and so a lot of times they're always looking for new content opportunities to expand into new markets, whether it's domestic or internationally. We had a recent customer example where they were doing very well in the U.S. and they were trying to get into some European and Asian markets. They had no local expertise in any of those languages, and so, but they did have local competition. And so what the platform was able to do, I'll talk more about like some of the custom ways we work with customers, but what the platform was able to do was go out and discover the best performing content from their competitors, help them identify what the right keywords were and the right keyword combinations were in those different languages, and say you should create content about this. And then basically that's like printing money, right? If you create the content and you rank well and you sell customers based on that, then you're able to generate more revenue for people. So that's an example. So really on the in-house side, we really try to help people cut costs, stop spending money on ads that aren't performing, spend more money on creating long-term valuable content that's going to resonate with your users and get them to come in day after day, grow into new markets, and then increase sales wherever you can. And so we divide up some of the recommendations we do based on the vertical that you're in. If you're e-commerce, you're going to get certain types of recommendations. If you're B2B or SaaS, then it's going to be slightly different. And it's one of the reasons that we decided to focus on the enterprise market was we've got our standard pricing plans, and then because our technology stack is so flexible, we're able to configure custom solutions for people that still allow us to scale up very well. We're not doing like custom development for people, but we can mix and match things, and then we can work with customers on even higher engagement levels to provide exactly the solution they need.
Yeah, no, I mean, GinzaMetrics seems like a great product. I want to change gears a little bit, though, and talk more about SEO in general, because that was kind of your all's foundation, and I know you have a lot of expertise around it, so I want to try to draw that out for our audience here a little bit, because I don't think you would go into creating an SEO Y Combinator company if there wasn't something in your core that you liked SEO. So let's talk about SEO as a growth channel.
Sure.
Why do smart companies focus on SEO? And that's the wiffle ball question, but I think it's a good one to start with.
Sure. I mean, if you look very broadly at the way to acquire customers online, you're basically dividing your acquisition strategy into paid or organic acquisition. So there's ads, and you can pay for user acquisition all day long. That's great. The problem with it is as soon as you stop paying for it, the water stops. So you're not building any long-term real value there. You're basically just arbitraging whatever opportunity happens to be out there, which is fine, but it has its limitations. Organic includes everything from, everyone talks about either content marketing or inbound marketing. It also obviously includes SEO and social. SEO is a very important part of that because if you properly put it into place within kind of the overall ecosystem, a lot of times what will happen is you can create new content, you can promote it via email, you can promote it via social channels, but a lot of time what's going to happen is after that content has been out there for the first few weeks, it's just going to drop off if you're only doing social and email, because you've kind of run through that campaign. But search provides you the opportunity to get long-term discoverability and findability for your brand, whatever content you're producing. And if you look at, everyone still searches for everything, So if you're looking for a new product, if you're looking for information on a product, trying to understand who's the best vendor and everything else, those in studies, study after study validates this. But basically, the people who rank and perform well in organic search are going to have the best branding and loyalty experience from these customers. It's one of the quickest paths to get high quality targeted leads for your business. And so it's a no-brainer. And a lot of people that have the right model for it are able to grow almost entirely on the basis of their organic search traffic. If you're looking at the combination of paid and organic search, the ads at the top of any Google search results page, those tend to get about a 10% click-through rate on those pages, where the top 2 or 3 positions will bring you a combined maybe 40-50% click-through rate. And so being at the top of that page just gives you at least 4 or 5 times the amount of traffic that you could ever get through paid search ads.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, SEO is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
What are some of the primary things that a startup can do to effectively use SEO in their favor? And I know you work with enterprise companies, but maybe give us some ideas that work with non-enterprise companies as well. What can somebody watching this who has a startup, what can they do to get the SEO kind of engine going?
Yeah, we actually do work with a number of startups as well. They tend to be startups that have something, do have a strategy in place. And the reason we try to work with startups early is because we want to build a long-term relationship with them so we can grow with them as they grow. And so we are getting pretty good at understanding what the major needs are around startups. Startups in SEO have some unique advantages and some disadvantages too. I'll start with the disadvantages. The disadvantages are if you're going up an entrenched competitor with good branding and high-quality site, Google is just going to automatically give them some credit that you don't have. And so, you're going to be dealing with that for a while. The advantage that you have, though, is that if you're creating high-quality, good content, and startups can typically move much faster and they're hungrier than these larger companies, you can start performing really well. In 3 to 6 months, we've seen people have phenomenal success with a well-executed content strategy. It does require volume. You can't just have like one blog post a month and expect to get anywhere. It does require strategy. It does require like targeting and thinking through exactly what your audience needs, and then you actually have to create high-quality content. The days of being able to like just long-tail content spam your way to traction are long gone and would not be any sort of strategy I'd recommend. But if you do that, if you do all those things right and you execute well, you can start to become very successful in highly competitive niches, even today. And so I would say startups, if they're able to do that and they've got the right vision and tools in place for that, then it can really work for them.
Yeah. What kind of content is best for an SEO strategy? If a startup hasn't really begun their content strategy, would you say write a blog every day? Would you say come out with a PDF ebook? Would you say fill in the blank? Like what kind of content is it that's going to do really well with SEO?
Yeah, the hardest thing about startups, any business, but startups, and we being a startup experience this as well, is time management. There's always a bottleneck, on the right resources. And the people who are most equipped to write about what they're able to deliver to their customers are also the ones that are busiest because they're closing deals and trying to build their company. So you just got to recognize that fact. But in order to do that, I actually wrote a post about this a couple months ago about basically establishing a ladder of content and basically realizing that you can't do everything all the time, and it's better to do something small than nothing at all. And so if you feel like you're struggling creating that PDF white paper because it has to be beautiful and you can't find good designers and everything else, take a step back, write a blog post once a week, because that's better than not doing it. If you can't even do that, just send out an email to people. Email is content marketing. Tweet something, just start small and like kind of bring it up, and then as you start to understand what really works for you, then you can build more of a process around that. I think that especially in a startup's early days, but really over the long term as well, a startup founder or a CEO or a kind of early team member writing consistently about certain topics that they're passionate about, that they believe that their users and customers are also passionate about, is one of the best ways to build branding, build long-term loyalty. It's something that I don't do nearly enough of, but every time I've done it, it's been super successful for us. We've got some of our best customers from that, because they get a feel for who the people are behind the product, much more so than they would from like some kind of sterile content marketing strategy. And so one of the beautiful things about content marketing when it's done well is it gives you the ability to be much more of an authentic person and company to your audience.
Yeah, no, I love your advice there. Do what you can, basically. That's my advice with working out. I like to go for runs, and if I set a goal and can't meet it, then you can get deflated, and then you just stop doing it. My goal is run as long as I want to and stop when I'm ready, and then I'll keep doing it, whenever I feel like it. So do what you can and be in it for the long haul. What are some of the biggest SEO mistakes that you've seen companies make? And I'm sure you see a lot because you go into a company, they're a new client, and some of them are probably a mess in terms of what they do. Has there been any messes that you've seen with SEO that we could learn from?
It used to happen. There used to be a lot of sites where I would look at it like, really, like, you've got to be kidding me, and that happened a lot more a couple years ago, and especially as Google became much more aggressive about policing low-quality sites and everything else. I would go into customers and just be like, guys, you've got to clean a lot of stuff up. People are getting much better about that now. There's a lot more kind of baseline information that people have. People are understanding that you've got to create a high quality site, and basic information architecture is your friend, and like doing all those things right is something that I'm seeing a lot more in startups, especially in areas where there's a lot more community support and kind of built-in education. People that are coming out of incubators kind of have a better sense for that. So that's good. There's always inevitably problems that we can help you identify that are just low-hanging fruit from an on-page optimization perspective, kind of customer acquisition strategy. The biggest mistakes that I still see people making right now would be number one would be just not creating enough content and not creating like the right mix of content. It depends on your vertical. Some companies inherently just will live or die by their content. They're maybe like some sort of lead gen platform, portal, destination site. Obviously, they're going to have a lot more content, so they're kind of lucky. But if you're in B2B or SaaS, or you're building like a mobile app or anything, and you just have like a blog post from September of last year, and that's the only one that's out there, like get on that, because that'll make a big difference. And so I would say like just quality content at volume is something that really makes a big difference.
Yeah, that's great insight. Thank you for that. Let's talk about a slide deck that you recently put together. It was called the 2013 Mobile SEO Playbook. And I wanted to kind of focus on this because, as we'll talk about in a second, mobile is huge and going to be even huger, if that's a word. and you have some plays that we can kind of follow based on those trends. But let's start with the trends, and then we'll get to the plays. You listed out, I think, 4 different trends around mobile and SEO. Talk to us about these a little bit. The first one was mobile growth and device adoption. What do you mean by that?
So we have access to a lot of really interesting data because of the fact that we're connecting everyone's analytics, and we're very careful about that data, of course, but we do analyze larger trends internally. And we do that so we can help our customers better understand for their own site what sorts of things they should be thinking about going forward. And so one of the things that we are seeing, and also just anecdotally speaking to customers, everyone is like, wow, I'm getting a lot. And we see this a lot in Asia too, and it's starting to happen more in the US, but everyone is just getting a huge amount of smartphone and increasingly tablet traffic, especially when compared with quote unquote PC traffic. And so there, in many cases, we're already starting to see this year where mobile traffic is exceeding traditional like desktop PC traffic. And so, but most companies are not really doing anything about that yet, and don't understand. Some people are getting better at doing like responsive design or what have you, but there's a lot of work that goes into that. There's all of the technical site optimization that you have to do in order to succeed there, and then there's really just kind of updating your content strategy to take mobile into account, because it's really a different ballgame in many ways.
Yeah, and then the next thing you say is that the word mobile is becoming outdated. So what does that mean?
So it's kind of too bad, because it's such a handy thing. I look at my phone and I think mobile, but really what's happening is, the reason I say the word mobile is becoming outdated is that everything is becoming mobile, and so arguably even laptops were the first version of mobile technology, and still are. And but really what we're seeing is that the idea that there is desktop and mobile is becoming something that's just not really the case. And if you look at the future long-term trends, everyone's going to have multiple devices. They're always going to be connected all the time. There's still a huge problem, in my opinion, about syncing and connectivity between different devices. I have 3 different devices that I use on any given day, and I almost have to like reset my entire browsing history and everything every time I go in there. Browsers like Chrome and stuff are helping with that. But basically, there's going to be a huge amount of catch-up work that companies have to do in order to recognize this new reality. You can call it mobile if you want to, but just realize in the back of your mind that everything is mobile now. So there's no such thing as like desktop versus mobile.
Yeah, and then you're also saying that you think tablets will, you're not saying, but the trends show that tablets will replace the majority of what we used to use desktops to use. So that's kind of those other trends, right?
Yeah, we're seeing that a lot too, and some of the data that I put in that playbook kind of reflected that. It does depend somewhat on what country you're talking about. Obviously, not all countries are catching up with that as quickly, but the U.S. and we worked a lot in Japan, so we see a lot of people starting, still a little bit slower than the U.S., but we're starting to see a lot more adoption there too.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the things that people used to have to do, like read the news or just do basic email or watch videos or whatever, that was all happening on desktops and laptops up until 2 years ago, and increasingly, as the data shows, people are switching to tablets for that. And so you're starting to see if you need to sit down and get through a bunch of work and you're writing reports and stuff. Yeah, you're probably still going to use your laptop or desktop or whatever, but that may eventually go away at some point too once typing technology picks up more. But we are starting to see a lot of that transition happening.
Yeah, and then the last one you kind of already mentioned, but that HTML5 responsive websites, they're on the rise, but we're not there yet. There's still a lot of work to be done, and like you said, it takes resources to do it. It takes the knowledge to do it. It's not something you can just slap on a website. But now let's talk about some of the plays. Those are the trends, and I think a lot of people, they may not have been able to say it explicitly, but they know that's where things are going. Inside, they look at their own usage and they realize, wow, I'm using my phone a lot more than I used to, and I'm using my tablet a lot more than I used to. So the question is, what do we do based on those trends? So the first thing you say is understand the impact of mobile on your business. What do you mean by that?
So you have to look at your traffic, you have to look at your audience and understand them, and just get a feel for how much, very simple things like what percentage of your traffic is coming from mobile devices, what percentage of it is still on kind of traditional devices. And, most companies that we deal with, because they're in innovative spaces, whether it's e-commerce or what have you, are seeing a lot more traction there. And so they're having to have very serious conversations internally about deciding, how much budget should we allocate towards new content creation and optimization around mobile.
Mm-hmm.
But before you can do any of that, you obviously just have to understand what your own internal metrics look like.
Yeah, and so it kind of starts by understanding what percentage of your traffic is mobile. But then the second one, you drill down even further. You say track mobile search and behavior and get user-centric. So you really get really drilled down with the mobile use.
Yep. This is one of the areas where we're really lucky that there are platforms out there like GinzaMetrics and Mixpanel and newer platforms, even like more kind of user-centric engagement platforms like Intercom. They're providing you with unique capabilities to understand at a very, as granular as it gets, individual people, understanding how they're using your site and your properties. And so you're able to see much better what types of people do certain things, and so you can do a lot more intelligent segmentation around what people need when they come to your site, and you can plan your content and strategy accordingly. And some of that's going to be more, if some of your content is used more often on mobile, then you would want to plan for that experience.
Yeah, and then you say to understand mobile search patterns. Is that just a matter of looking at the metrics and seeing what mobile people are searching for as opposed to desktop users, that kind of thing?
Yeah, a lot of times there's a ton of research out there on this, but the types of things even that the same individual will search for on their phone versus on their desktop are going to be different. If you think about it, just kind of logically, if you're out looking for a restaurant, a lot of your searches tend to be like restaurants, bars, whatever. Like what can I go do? What can I go eat? What have you? Entertainment related things. Where you're probably not going to sit down and be like, what does Wikipedia say about some king in the Middle Ages? That's not type of thing. So that's more of like a research mode. That tends to happen, when you're on your desktop and sitting at home or at the office.
Yeah, and then you also say to segment your traffic and content and users. What do you mean by that?
So that goes into, again, a big part of our strategy that we help our customers work with is properly segmenting everything, because the only way you can really execute a strategy is understanding where that strategy is going to be relevant, and the way you do that is by creating meaningful segments across your audience and their interests. And so we provide a lot of tools to help you do that, and just from kind of an educational perspective, we try to get people to think about that as well. But really understanding different types of behavior patterns based on users, based on what type of content they're looking for, based on what types of things they've looked for, like what type of keywords they've searched on to get to your site in the first place, what they're hoping to get out of that experience, really understanding what those segments are. Mm-hmm. And if you go, really far, it can be super granular, but at the end of the day, you can usually roll things up to a couple of key high-level strategies that are relevant to the segments that you've identified.
Yeah, tell me if I have, the nail on the head here. As a startup, could I say, okay, I need to create certain kinds of content because of the use patterns that really work well with mobile, so it displays appropriately, it looks nice, it works on mobile, and it has the right keywords that somebody on mobile might be searching for, as opposed to the king in the Middle Ages sort of thing. And so it's really just bringing all this together, using the data, using what GinzaMetrics, Kissmetrics, Google Analytics is telling me, and then building a strategy around content and SEO based on that. Is that right?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah, that's awesome. The next one, you say plan for mobile first. And this one's an interesting one because it seems like a year or two ago that was like the new thing that everybody said, and then
Yeah.
it was Fred Wilson was kind of the first one to say it, I think. And then Fred Wilson came out and said, "Well, I don't know, it's not going so well. It's kind of harder than we thought it was going to be." And so now it's like people are just confused. Mobile first, not mobile first. Like it's not as clear as we all thought it was. Tell me what you think about mobile first.
I'm a big believer in it because the thing that's nice about mobile first, and if you have the time and tools and resources to build a responsive site with mobile first in mind, then it's going to scale up very nicely to your desktop. And I think the challenge early on when people were talking about mobile first, 2 years ago, is that the state of the industry had not really caught up to actually support that. People think that you can throw a bootstrap template in there and woohoo, you've got responsive. And if you've ever actually built a site, I love all the frameworks that are out there, but if you actually tried to build a site that is responsive to different devices, it's not just about having that bootstrap thing there. You've actually got to do a lot of work to make it work right. That costs time, that costs money, it's resources. You're going to be probably late on projects for the first few times you do it. And so I think people were getting frustrated by this message because it was supposed to be so easy, and it wasn't. And so now things are getting better. The frameworks are catching up. There's a lot more people out there who understand how to make these technologies work. Agencies are picking it up. Internal developers are figuring it out. So I think it's going to get easier, and a lot of those frustrations will start to go away. I still believe that long term that is the right strategy, because by planning for mobile first, you kind of get the desktop stuff for free. It's not easy. I mean, maybe free is the wrong word, but at least you're doing it at the same time, so that when you release your project, you're ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like what you said, creating mobile first and then scaling up. I've done that with some of my projects where I actually create the mobile experience first,
Yep.
and then a lot of the internet's too complicated anyway. So by making it mobile first, you end up getting to the heart of what it is you're doing. And then when you create the larger version, you leave out a lot of the stuff you didn't need anyway, because you really honed it down to its essence. So I think
Yep.
mobile first, it does more than we really understand in terms of aesthetic and the core of the use cases and just everything about it. So I like that strategy. Now the next two we've kind of already talked about. You can add in something else if you have something, but build your content marketing strategy around mobile. So we kind of already mentioned that. And then optimize for mobile devices. Anything else on those two?
Yeah, so those are both really big topics and are probably worth digging into them on their own, right? But you can basically there's a lot of information out there on the technical side of optimizing for mobile content. So I won't go into that too much right now, but I did provide in that slide deck some useful pointers. Really, it's about making some common sense decisions about how browsers are going to react differently based on the different device profiles and the people who are using it and what they're looking for. And then not doing stupid things. Nobody here uses Flash anymore. Some of the countries we work in, we still see people using it. That's just an obvious no-no. And so it's a lot of things that you would expect, but just putting it into practice and building a solid development process around those.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last one, I'm not sure what you mean, so you can explain this to me. Build a mobile content ecosystem. What does that mean?
So when we look at our customer search strategy, one of the first things we tell them is don't just think about the content that you have on your own site. And this is true for both, whether it's like mobile or otherwise. It's basically your company, your site itself should be seen as the hub for your brand. And whether you're a startup or a big company, you have a brand and you're trying to promote that brand and get it found. There are so many valuable ways that you can perform well in search and social with on-site content in addition to on-site content. So it's like creating high-quality videos on YouTube, and we use SlideShare quite a bit. Certain companies are being very successful in some of the more curated communities like Pinterest and so forth. So understanding the full web view of exactly which channels out there are going to help you, and then tying them back to your content strategy is something that's super important, and it's true for search. So from a mobile perspective, you basically just kind of take that one step further, include other things like apps. Apps may be an important thing, part of your strategy going forward. Maybe it's just things like video that tends to be accessed quite a bit on mobile devices. Understand that, make sure it's all properly formatted and optimized for that, and then track your performance from mobile devices right next to your desktop performance, because without understanding that, you could be missing out on a lot of traffic. Mobile is interesting now both on the paid and organic side because people are still so behind in optimizing for it that there's kind of a lot of green pasture out there that you can take advantage of. It's not going to last forever, but you can start to build a lot of traction that people haven't really kind of gotten their heads around yet.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And thanks for walking through the plays to use on mobile there, because those are plays that we're all going to have to be using in the very near future, if we're not already, that's for sure. This has been a great interview. I have one last question for you here. What's the best advice that you have for any startup that's trying to grow? You've grown a startup. You're helping other companies and startups grow. What advice do you have for people in that situation?
I would say the first thing is just understand who you're selling to. So a lot of times you hear companies talk about, or you hear startup mentors talk about product market fit. And I would take that one step further, and it's not about product market fit as much as it is product seller fit. Understand what's the title of the person you're selling to. What problems are they dealing with? And it's easy to say, but so many companies still get that wrong. If I start kind of quizzing them on what that is, things get vague very quickly. So I would spend some time really trying to figure that out. And the other thing is understand the one thing that makes you unique and worth buying. I think in the SaaS world and startups in general, people say, well, we're cheaper and we're simple and we're beautiful. And those are just not really good differentiators. None of those. Like, being cheaper is not a good thing. Simple doesn't really mean anything unless it's in some weird subjective relative term. And even depending on your market, having a better user experience doesn't always matter. I think that high quality UX is always great, but you may be surprised by how much that doesn't matter sometimes. It really depends on the buyer and what they need. Mm-hmm. So that's really understanding that buyer. So for us, for our agency partners, it's because we provide the best platform for managing large client portfolios and helping them gain new business. For our in-house customers, it's because of the ability to create, a scalable process around the type of insights that we provide back to them.
Yeah. So have product seller fit and know your unique selling proposition. That's awesome advice to end on. Ray, thank you so much for coming on Growth Hacker TV.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Great talking to you.